My father's experience as a CIA director and an OSS agent shaped my views on the dangers of far-right extremism and the importance of democracy and human rights in many ways. Here are some of the lessons I learned from him. Far-right extremism is not a new phenomenon. It has been around for a long time and has caused immense suffering and destruction in the past. My father witnessed firsthand the horrors of Nazi Germany, which was led by a dictator who had a thirst for power, a low opinion of man, and a fear of intellectual honesty. He also interviewed Hitler himself as a reporter during the 1936 Olympics in Berlin and saw how he manipulated the masses with propaganda and lies. Far-right extremism is not limited to one country or region. It can spread across borders and continents and infect different societies and cultures. My father worked for the OSS, the predecessor of the CIA, which was a global organization that conducted covert operations, espionage, counterintelligence, research and analysis, and technical development to fight against the Axis powers during World War II. He collaborated with allies from different nations and backgrounds who shared a common goal of defeating fascism and preserving freedom. Far-right extremism is not invincible. It can be challenged and defeated by courage, intelligence, and solidarity. My father was part of the OSS operational groups, which were small teams of specially trained U.S. military commandos who fought in uniform behind enemy lines alongside partisan forces. He also participated in the JEDBIG teams, which were joint paramilitary forces from allied countries that parachuted into France to aid the resistance movement against German occupiers. He risked his life many times to sabotage enemy installations, gather intelligence, and support local fighters. Far-right extremism is not compatible with democracy and human rights. It thrives on hatred, violence, oppression, and intolerance. It denies the dignity and worth of every human being. It seeks to impose a single ideology or worldview on everyone else. My father valued democracy and human rights as the foundations of a just and peaceful society. He respected diversity and pluralism as sources of strength and innovation. He defended liberty and justice as universal principles that applied to all people. These are some of the lessons I learned from my father's legacy. They inspired me to fight against far-right extremism in the US today, which I see as a threat to our democracy and our humanity. I hope they inspire you too. Far-right extremism is a growing threat to the security and diversity of the United States. Far-right extremists are motivated by various ideologies, such as white supremacy, anti-government sentiment, and nativism. They often target racial, ethnic, religious, and political groups that they perceive as enemies or inferior. According to a report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, far-right terrorist attacks and plots have comprised more than half of all terrorist incidents in the United States nearly every year since in 2019. Far-right extremism accounted for nearly two-thirds of failed, foiled, and successful attacks. Some of the most deadly and notorious examples of far-right violence in recent years include the 2015 Charleston church shooting, the 2017 Charlottesville rally, the 2018 Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, the 2019 El Paso Walmart shooting, and the 2021 Capitol riot. These attacks have claimed dozens of lives and injured hundreds more. Far-right extremists use various tactics and platforms to spread their propaganda, recruit followers, and plan attacks. They often exploit social media, online forums, encrypted messaging apps, and gaming platforms to communicate and coordinate with each other. They also use symbols, slogans, memes, and music to express their views and attract attention. Far-right extremism is not only a domestic problem in the United States. It is also a global phenomenon that transcends national borders and influences other extremist movements. For example, some far-right extremists in the United States have expressed admiration for Hitler and other Nazi figures. Some have also drawn inspiration from far-right attackers in other countries, such as Norway, New Zealand, and Germany. The rise of far-right extremism in the United States poses a serious challenge to the values and principles that this nation was founded on. It threatens the safety and dignity of millions of Americans who belong to different races, religions, cultures, and political affiliations. It undermines the democratic institutions and norms that sustain our society. It requires a concerted effort from all sectors of society to counter this menace and protect our nation from hate and violence. My father's legacy inspired me to fight against far-right extremism in the U.S., a growing threat that has claimed many lives and caused much suffering. Far-right extremism encompasses a diverse set of ideologies and groups that oppose democracy, diversity, and human rights. Some of the most common types of far-right extremists are white supremacists, nativists, and anti-government militias. In my personal life, I fight against far-right extremism by educating myself and others about the history and reality of this phenomenon. I read books, watched documentaries, and listened to podcasts that expose the roots and consequences of far-right radicalization. I also engage in respectful dialogue with people who may hold different views or beliefs than me, and try to challenge their assumptions and stereotypes with facts and empathy. I do not tolerate hate speech or violence in any form, and I report any suspicious or threatening behavior to the authorities. In my professional life, I fight against far-right extremism by supporting marginalized communities that are often targeted by these groups. I work as a social worker in a refugee resettlement agency, where I help newcomers from different countries and cultures to integrate into American society. I provide them with counseling, education, employment, and legal services. I also advocate for their rights and dignity in the public sphere, and raise awareness about the challenges and contributions of refugees in our country. Additionally, I fight against far-right extremism by challenging hateful narratives that fuel division and fear. I write articles and blog posts that counter misinformation and propaganda spread by far-right media outlets and online platforms. I use evidence-based arguments and personal stories to debunk myths and stereotypes about immigrants, minorities, and other groups that are often demonized by the far right. I also participate in campaigns and movements that promote social justice, democracy, and solidarity among people of different backgrounds and identities. These are some of the ways that I fight against far-right extremism in my personal and professional life. I believe that this is the best way to honor my father's legacy, who fought against Nazism during World War II and witnessed its horrors firsthand. He taught me that there is nothing worse than hatred and intolerance, and that we must always stand up for what is right and good. He also taught me that we are stronger together than apart, and that we can overcome any challenge if we work with each other instead of against each other.